All right. So let me go back. Yeah, so Raj has got two options. So one is that he saves his 500 rupees and then decides, okay, I've got 2, 3 different things I can do with that. Or he says, let me spend this 500 rupees and go out for watching a movie. So that's what he decides. Eventually he says, no, I think the value of watching a movie is much more than keeping that 500 rupees with it. So in a sense, what Raj says, he says that I could either give up the enjoyment of watching the movie and decide to keep 500 rupees for myself, or he says that I watch the movie, but I forego my 500 bucks. So I'm just trying to put things in a different perspective. All of the last 3-4 slides essentially mean the same thing. So now here's my friend Raj. Raj, can you recognize yourself?
Yes.
Okay, so Raj finally says that, okay, forget it. I don't care about 500 bucks. I think it's important. It's a Sunday for me. And I just need to go out, spend this 500 rupees and watch my favorite movie for which I've been waiting for so many days. And he says, okay. Now, somebody goes to Raj and says, look, Raj, it's not about 500. I think you missed. You've actually got 750 rupees in your pocket. So now what happens? Does Raj still say that I'm ready to give up 750 rupees and watch the movie? So, Raj, if I were to ask you that instead of watching a movie, now you get 750 rupees, would you still go ahead and watch a movie?
I will take the 750.
Okay. So, this is what you do. You have a change in mind. So, you say, I'm going to forego the movie and maybe do something better with 750. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. So, Raj, I do mind reading actually. That's how I got to know this. All right. So now I say, Raj, let's not, I made a mistake. It's not 750, it's actually 550. So you've got this 50 rupees extra with you instead of 500. So would you want to still keep that 550, or, you say, okay, 500 and 550 is the same for me and I'll still go ahead and watch the movie. So what are you going to do now?
Depends. I can go with 500 or I can go with 550.
Okay, so you can go with 500 or you can go with 550. Excellent answer. Now what has happened is that, Raj is a little indifferent. So to him, it doesn't really make a difference whether it's 500 or 550. And he says it's irrespective whether I've got 500 bucks with me or I've got 550 with me. I will continue the option of watching the movie. Now, the essence of this example is very simple. So the idea is that as your consumption and level of satisfaction for a product or a service does not change, even if the monetary value changes for the same product, it's called a use value. So which means that if you are satisfied with a product or service without its relation to a marginal change in the monetary value, then that's called the use value of the product. So which means a 500 or a 550 equates to the fact that how much value does Raj receive from watching the movie. Which means that if I were to give more options, so I give an option of 750, then I give an option of 550, so I can keep on doing these things. But I could have said, okay, Raj, now if I give you 600, now if I give you 650, but the idea was to come to a point which Raj will not differentiate between two price points for the sake of watching his movie and deriving the value and satisfaction out of it. So willingness to pay essentially is the value which is up to, but no more than your use value. The use value in this case was 550 rupees. All right, so I think it's a question session, so I'm going to take it a little slow. If anybody's got a question, please feel free to raise your hands. So somebody has asked hedonic value on WTP. I guess Harsh has asked for hedonic value on WTP. Harsh, do you want me to talk about hedonic value, etc. in this session, or should we first cover up the basics? So I've given you the permission to talk. Yeah, so you've got the rights to talk. I think let's not. My suggestion is, I think I really don't want to get into these theoretical aspects and the statistical values. So there are a lot of ways of arriving at WTB, which I'm going to cover in this session towards the end of the presentation. The second question which you've asked is marginal utility of money. This is exactly what I'm going to cover in the next few slides. So I hope those slides will answer your question. All right.
Sure. Sure.
So does anybody have another question? Any other question from anyone? Okay. Excellent. All right, so now we've got marketing folks everywhere. So these PVR sales girl, she sees that Raj is coming to watch a movie, and he's alone currently. And then she seizes this opportunity to give him an offer, saying that Mr. Raj, I've got an offer for you that you come and watch movies regularly at our PVR, and we'll give you a good deal. So if you watch a single movie, you're going to pay 500 rupees. Let's say if you watch 2 movies instead of 1,000, you're going to pay 900 rupees. If you watch 3 movies instead of 1,500, you're going to pay 1,200. So Raj, marketing folks keep on bundling more and more offers and entice customers into engaging a larger amount of spend to the same value which they would have derived otherwise from a single unit. All right, so the PVR guy catches hold of Raj and offers him a deal to watch different movies every day for the next 7 days. So my question to Raj is, I think I've muted Raj, so let me just kind of unmute him. Sorry. Oh, Raj, can you hear me? Raj?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the question is for you that, okay, you've decided to spend 500 rupees on watching a movie, and this PVR girl comes to you and she asks you a question. Okay, Raj, if I want to give you an offer that you watch a new movie for the next 7 days, so how much are you going to pay for that? So is it going to be 7 into 500, which is 3,500 rupees that you would want to pay for that?
No, I look for the offer.
You look for an offer. Excellent. So let's say typically the offer that you get is, or you don't get, you maybe try and negotiate, is that, okay, if I'm coming on a Monday and watching a single movie, I pay 500 rupees. If I come on a Monday and Tuesday, both of these days, I'm going to pay 900. For 3 days, 1,200. For 4 days, it's 1,400. And then I say it's 5 days, it's 1,500. And then you say, boss, I've paid you enough money for 5 days. Now you need to give me 2 days of extra bonus. I'm not going to pay you for 2 more days. I think most of us will do something similar to this. So, Raj, do you think this is a good way of negotiating? I think from a 3,500 rupees calculation, this comes to around 1,500 rupees, and you're getting 7 movies.
Yes.
Will that? Okay, excellent. So, Harsh, this answers your question, which says that if you are consuming the same product, additional units of the same product over and over again and again, then the satisfaction that you derive from every additional utility, every additional unit of that product keeps on decreasing. So which means that if you, well, let's take an example, if you were to have a pizza for 100, 200 rupees today, and somebody says, look, I'm going to give you 3 pizzas, why don't you pay me 300 rupees? You're going to say, obviously, I'm not going to pay you for that because my satisfaction is great. So my satisfaction is worth the value of 100 rupees by having one single pizza, but if I have 3 of them, the value is not worth 300 rupees. So this in economics and statistics is called diminishing marginal utility. So which essentially means that the satisfaction of watching a movie after the 5th day for Raj is of 0 value. That's the satisfaction he's deriving. Now, if I were to plot this on an Excel, on a graph, and I think this is something which most of us can easily relate to, which I've just put 3 columns, and I've said that, okay, my total willingness to pay for watching a movie on a Monday is 500, and for 2 days is 900, 1,200, 1,400, and so on. Now, what I've done in the last column is that what's my marginal willingness? So for the same day, it remains 500. For 2 days, the average or the marginal willingness reduces to 400, then 300. So it's basically a division. It's the total amount by the division of number of days. What I've done in the next one is just plotted that onto a graph. which puts the amount on the y-axis and the day combination on the x-axis. Okay. Now there's something very interesting, which as sellers we will often realize, and this is something which is a very, very fine and a very thin line, is that we often make a mistake of assuming that willingness to pay and willingness to accept is the same thing. So while we've spoken at length on willingness to pay, it's also very important for me to define at this point, because we're going to get into some little bit of heavy stuff in the next few slides, is that we also understand that there's something called as willingness to accept. Now, all of us are sellers, and willingness to accept is the lowest price that we as sellers can afford. It's also called as floor price in certain cases. When we are doing this W2P, we have to just assume that, it's willingness to accept. So it doesn't mean that I am ready to accept 200 rupees, so my WTP cannot go lower than 200 rupees. So that's a basic assumption that all of us need to keep in mind. So how do you find your WTP? I think that's one important question. So just look again if anybody's got a question here. But what if I'm not consuming at the same time? I have sufficient interval. So Harsh, if you can elaborate on this question, I'm just giving you the allow to talk permission here. Okay, Harsh, if you can hear me, you can talk and maybe elaborate on your question. Okay, I don't hear Harsh. So what I'm assuming is that, let's say, Harsh's question means that, let's say I'm watching a movie in the first week of January, and then I give a gap of, let's say, another 2 months, and then watch a movie. So what will happen is that, these two periods have to be treated independently. So a WTP index for a January month will have to be treated separately, and the WTP index for March will have to get treated separately. And in my next few slides, I'm going to cover up a fact on how WTP on a qualitative basis should be defined when we're doing this calculation. Hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, Harsh, you can ask me again at the end of the session. I'll be happy to answer that. All right, so time to do some heavy lifting. It's not very heavy, but it's going to involve a bit of graphs and a bit of very basic, very, very extremely basic knowledge of statistics, which I'm very sure that all of us would be having here. And, before we get into WTP, so a lot of people have been asking me questions, Mayank, what is the formula of WTP? So, the reason of not having a perfect, there are formulae of WTP, so there are ways of building a demand curve, but WTP is a combination of science. It's also a combination of data. It's also a combination of the demographics, and it's also a combination of a consumer preference. So you can make a formula on metrics and variables which are available with you, but a lot of other things are qualitative or are external data which you need to have to get to a more accurate level of WTP. Okay, I'll just cover up these points. So the factors which affect WTP, essentially, there are many more factors, but I've just tried to pick up, the top 5 is, number one, what's the overall economy? So people from prosperous countries will have a higher WTP. All of us know we've been selling, many of sellers are selling their products in the Indian Amazon.in and similar products in Amazon.com. So we know that the WTP for the same product in developed countries is higher than what it is in India. The second is, what is the situation in the country? For example, all of us know we are all facing this huge pandemic of COVID-19. Now, in this case, the consumer preferences have changed, the shops have closed down, there is no availability of product, which is why the WTP of products, and especially in this case, non-essential products, will dramatically go down. Second factor which affects a WTP is a personal price point, which basically talks about demographics, income levels, backgrounds. So people with various demographics, income levels, and backgrounds will have separate WTPs. So, for example, somebody may call a product as a need, and somebody else will call it as a luxury. So, a WTP for both of these things will be very different. The third thing is how much is the availability of your product, and is that product very rare? So if a product is much in demand and it's a very rare product, then the WTP automatically jumps to very high points. And one such example is the diamond. However, if I've just put a note here that a lot of people might think that if I reduce the availability and make it more rare, then my WTP will increase, which means that consumers will be willing to pay me a higher point. But there's a huge amount of risk there, is that you already have a set of willing customers. You have a history of customers paying you for your products or buying your products. So you might tend to lose those products if you exceptionally increase the price of your product. And the second thing is that competition could also jeopardize your products and maybe offer some things which are at a lower price point than yours. What most important thing is the perception of quality. So in e-commerce specifically, a quality cannot be perceived by a physical touch. It's essentially on the quality of listings that you do. It's essentially on how you've built the brand, how much of advertising you're doing for the product. So it's essentially, you might have a fantastic product, but unless the customer perceives that the product is of great quality, the WTP will not go up. And last is, what is the individual needs and goals of customers? So people will have different needs and different goals at different points of time. So a situation for a person A would be very different for a person B when buying the same product, which means that for both of these people, even if the product is same, the pricing or a willingness to pay for the same product will be very different. Now, when we doing a WTP calculation, so there are several things which are in control, some of the things which are not in control in terms of data points that we need to collect. So what I've tried to do is put in all those points which we can collect, and we can classify these as points which are easier for us to collect or points which may not be easy, but essentially what I would know of is that all of these things can be collected from people when you're making your WTP. So first thing, very important, very, very important, is to do a customer survey, and that's very important when you're specifically launching a new product. So WTP is very data centric. So you can't. It's not intuitive at all. You can't have an intuition that, look, this is a product, it's nice, it's good looking, it's got a nice packing, so I can sell it for $500. It doesn't work that way. To derive the real WTP, it's very important to rely on real surveys. You must do actual surveys, get a sample, do surveys, and I'm going to talk about what is the kind of survey that one must do to get this data on for WTP. Market research is a broader exercise than a customer survey, and I think a lot of agencies provide this data. There's a lot of published information on the internet. And if you're looking at a very large launch of a specific product, then I think market research is very important. Third is historical data. So all of us are very fortunate that we work on e-commerce. And the best part about working on e-commerce is that we've got data points with us. So at any point in time, we can, download reports of last 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, look at trends, look at a lot of information, and generate this historical data. Now, fourth point is get access of consumer demands. So not for your product, but for your similar products or for categories, you can get the demand amount of your customers in various markets. And lastly, what is your business metric? So, when you're talking about a WTP, end of the day, you need to define the number of units that you would want to sell in the next quarter or in the next 6 months or in the next 1 year. Because let's say today you, define a price of your product basis the WTP, and that will give you a volume of X units. But your business objective is maybe 10X. So according to that, you will need to tweak your WTP. Okay, so let me just go back and see if there are any other questions. Sorry, I'll be keep on doing this because in the webinar, when I'm presenting, I don't get alerts on if anybody's asked a question. Okay, Harsh is the only one who's asking questions. Do you think that distribution model of any particular is also a factor of WTP? Like Patanjali products had higher demand, but due to erratic distribution gone, its demand gone down slowly. So we can say distribution is a factor of WTP. Yes, absolutely yes. So while Patanjali or any other such example would have built a great perceived quality of the product, but the point which I mentioned in my previous slide, which I'll just open it again, and that relates to this, is the third point on availability and rareness. So which means reducing the availability is also a high risk and can tend to lose willing customers. So the question which you've asked, Harsh, possibly relates to this fact is that while Patanjali would have done the good things on quality perception, on a lot of other things, but the distribution structure essentially ruined the availability of the product. So today, if people were ready to buy Patanjali, but it's not available in the store, so the WTP gets impacted severely. Okay. Let me see if there's anybody else who's no audio. No audio, which means what? Unfortunately, in a webinar, it's not like a Zoom session where the audio is open for everyone. But if you can just raise your hands, I'll immediately grant you an access to. So Mandeep here has requested for an audio. So Mandeep, I've given you the audio access. If you've got a question, you can straight away ask here. All right, so I'll move to the next steps. When we're doing a WTP and we know what are the data points that we need to collect, there are a few things which we need to earmark as a first step. So the readiness of things is important before we start execution of a project. So the first thing is know your target population. So, and that's important because for any survey that you need, you can't just open out and go outside and start asking questions to people. It's very important for you to first define your sample size. So if you know your target population, that okay, my target for a product is, it's a person, it's a lady in the age group this to this, who's in a semi-urban or an urban area and whose disposable income level is such and such. This is my target audience. So this is that once you've defined your target audience, it's very easy. It's much more easier to sample that out. Second point is know your financial objectives. So you must very clearly be knowing what are your costs, what profits you want, what is going to be your product life cycle in terms of sustainability. The third thing is when you're doing a WTP and you end up looking at a lot of products, it becomes a lot more confusing and the results become biased in nature. So you can't be asking the same set of questions for different products to the same set of people. Know your current prices. So, if this, and this is applicable for those products which have been selling for a while, so you must know what are your current prices. So this is quite an obvious, but, if somebody else is doing a WTP on your behalf, then he should know what is your current price. He should also know your current and past sale volume and select a standalone survey module, which means that when you're doing a survey, it should be an independent survey. It should not be linked to any other topic or any other product or any other research subject. Now, so the first step when you're doing this kind of a survey is, and I think some of you can recognize the faces here. So I took the liberty of extracting these images. Is build your sample. Look at the people who are going to be potential relevant customers for you. They could be friends and family. They could be people who are into similar business. They could be, a set of online shoppers for which you have a contact with, and people who've been happy with your service. So these are the set of people who would be your potential customers for the product which you're trying to derive a WTP index for. Right. After that, the next important thing is you need to devise a questionnaire. So the first point that we discussed is, a consumer service important. So when you're doing a questionnaire, there's a few things you need to keep in mind which are important. First of all, do not do a questionnaire survey on email. So a lot of people get email saying, okay, please fill this questionnaire. The response quality of a face-to-face interview versus an electronic interview is very different. Okay, so when you're doing a face-to-face interview, you can measure the responses even by the body language of the person, which you cannot do in an electronic interview. Use close-ended objective questions. So most questions or all questions that you should ask should be close-ended, which means that it should not be a paragraph as an answer. It should be a yes, no. It should be a number 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be, you've given 3 options, A, B, C, and ask the customer to take one out of these. So that's the meaning of close-ended. Also, try to be as unbiased. So when you're taking an interview, the respondent should not get this feeling that you're a brand owner or you're trying to, get answers in your favor from the respondent. So tell him that price increment reduces the consumption, which means that, if I'm selling you for 100 rupees and you buy 10 units of that, tomorrow if I'm going to sell the same product of 150 rupees, your consumption will go low. It's very important. Also remind the customer that you've got a product A, but in the market, similar products like B, C, D, E, and E are also available. Now, all of these things are psychologically done to remove the biases from the respondent's mind. Also, question the respondents about factors which influence their preferences. So, ask them that, okay, if you were to buy this product from me, when would you want to buy that? Is there an occasion in your life that you want to buy that, or you get your salary, that's the time you buy that? So very specific questions related to their preferences, which must be put into your questionnaire. But again, remember, all of them have to be close-ended. So this is again a little dry sheet which says the sequence of question is, and you can design the questionnaire that the way you want to. Everybody can have a separate questionnaire, which is one of the reasons that I did not include a sample questionnaire in this session. But if you want some, I've got a few sample questionnaires with me and I'll be happy to share them with you. So the sequence of question, the first point is that ask him a question that if you're using a similar product, what is the price that you pay for it? Okay, you note the answer. Second question is, would you want to, let's say the same example of a movie may not be a correct example. Let's go in and talk about a pizza. Let's say you're buying a pizza for 100 rupees. So he says, okay, I'm paying 100 rupees for that. You ask him a question, would you pay a medium increase? Let's say I take 100 to 125. Would you be ready to pay for that? And then put in factors such as quality, etc., so that you're showing the product to him. Alternatively, when you're doing this questionnaire, remember the product should be there with you. The product should be visible to the customer. He can have the touch and feel of the product. Third question is that, you ask him, would you be ready to pay a higher increase or would you be ready to pay a lower increase? So there's a yes and no. After a medium, you then have a base, then you try and take that up, say, okay, from 125, are you ready to pay? If he says yes, then you ask him, are you ready to pay 150? And if he says no, then you ask him, are you ready to pay 110? Once you've plotted these questions on a piece of paper, the last question is, okay, you tell him after you've got all of your answers and you know what the answer is going to be, almost near to that, you tell him what is the highest price that you would be willing to pay for that. So that's more of a derivative. You need not ask this question in an actual survey. You might derive that from the previous two questions. And then the last question, tell them, look, what will you do if the price were too high? Let's say I take that price to 150 rupees. So a respondent will say, I will think about it. He will say, no, I'm definitely not going to buy it from you. Or there could be a person who says, no, yes, I could still buy because I trust your quality. Your service is very good. Your product has got a longer life. And these are very, very important answers for you. So which means for a WTP, these external demographical factors, consumer preferences have to be necessarily recorded in your questionnaire. Now, let's say, this question of watching a movie was asked to Raj, and we took him through the stage of giving him an offer of watching 7 movies consecutively in the next 7 days. Now, let's say we've got, a whole bunch of people. We've got PVR comes to FECOMs, uh, and it says, look, we've got an offer for FECOMs members on watching movies for the next 7 days, and we're going to give them a great deal. So what the PVR guy does is he starts talking to each one of us. He picks up 10, 15, 20 members from the group, and he asks the same set of questions, which in my earlier slides I talked about Raj. And he says, and he comes out to a number that, okay, for a WTP of 100, there have been 12 respondents. For WTP, some people have said, 4 guys have said, okay, they'll be ready to pay 125, and so on and so forth. And there are 5 people in the group who've said, okay, I can go up to 300 rupees. So, which is where you need to realize that for the same product or for the same service, there are 64 customers, but every customer has got a different WTP. Now, if we were to just devise our WTP from the basis of a single respondent, that WTP would have gone incorrect. If we've got the right sample size, we've asked the right questions in the questionnaire, and we've plotted them correctly, then we get this kind of a graph, which is called a frequency distribution curve, which essentially means that at what frequency, at what price points do I get what kind of demands. So which I've mentioned a note in the bottom saying estimating demand at different price levels. Now, you can put your charts in various different kinds of charts. So the same data you can put into a column graph, you can put into a line graph. Now, what I like personally in these kind of scenarios, especially when I'm doing a demand curve plotting, is a scatter diagram. Now, the scatter diagram, it becomes the readability of a scatter diagram is good. And I find that to be easier for me, but it's completely your choice on what kind of a graph you want to look at. I'm going to take a minute's break here and see if anybody's got a question so far. Okay. So to the latest question with respect to Patanjali distribution, I guess we'd have to call in the rule of all other factors held constant. So if I understand your question, Amit, is that on the Patanjali side, beside the availability and the availability of the product is something which affected the WTP. So that's one of the obvious things that comes to my mind is saying that why did the WTP change of a Patanjali product, and that kind of leaded some kind of a confusion also into the consumer's mind. But to give an actual answer on a very face value of this question is very difficult because unless I have some research information, some data points with me, without that, it's going to be difficult to answer that question. And Amit has asked another question. Here, I guess WTP is going to be solely a factor where price point is sole determinant of willingness. Not too clear on this question. So, what I can do is, Amit, maybe, this is Amit Singh, okay. Amit Singh. So Amit, you can ask your question. You can unmute your microphone. You got the permission to ask your question because I'm sorry I couldn't understand the question completely. In any case, I'm just going to skip this one and come to the third one, which says in e-commerce scenario, there are other factors which impact customers' WTP like demographics, rating, buy button, yeah, so it's what you've said is correct. So the WTP for a customer definitely gets affected by demographics. So that's something which I already mentioned. So when you're collecting data, yes, even if you look at this example of watching a movie, if the demographics were not different for 64 respondents, then the WTP would have been the same, which means that 64 people have given different price points. So yes, and I think that's very much situation of demographics, on the background, on income levels, on consumer preference, on what is the situation that he's into. So a movie example which I can give of which comes to my mind immediately. Let's say somebody is going out with his girlfriend and he wants to watch a movie, so it doesn't matter to him what price he wants to pay. So for the WTP for that kind of a customer is going to be significantly higher. And yeah, absolutely. So a rating, a buy button. I don't know about the buy button per se because how that will affect the WTP, but yes, the rating will definitely affect. Is WTP actual critical in such scenario? Absolutely. So WTP is critical in every scenario, and this is specifically more if you got new product launches and you want to get the sweetest price point, wherein you will derive all your business objectives, your company objectives, your financial objectives, your sale objectives. WTP is extremely important. In e-commerce, it becomes even more relevant because the product life cycle is very short. So today, if I make a product go live, and this depends on category to category, but I think the average life of a product is about 6 to 8 months. So after 6 to 8 months, it's very important for sellers to bring newer products because that's also the expectation of the customer to get more and more new products. All right. Yeah, so it's the same graph on the data which we plotted. So, on the x-axis is the price point, and on the y-axis is the demand in this case. What I'm trying, and you can put it otherwise also. You can put the price on y-axis and demand on x-axis. Really doesn't matter because the output on the scatter diagram will be similar. So, while I've just tried to put about 6, 7 dots, but since you've got 62 respondents, there will be actually 62 spots, and this becomes much more accurate. Now, what you need to do is identify the spot which has got the highest density. Now, if you see, there are 4 spots, which is in the range of 150 to about 225, which has got the maximum number of responders. Circle that spot. So this is a very, very basic and a rough technique to that. Anything which is outside of this, those are called outliers. So those points are not even relevant for our tool to measure the WTP. Just remove them, just ignore them because they're going to suck in a lot of your time and efforts because the smaller data that you filter out makes it more relevant instead of unnecessarily carrying the outlier or non-relevant data. Once you've got these data points, these single data points, this is the circle. Next is the time to make a demand curve. Okay. Now this is a demand curve. It's very, very simple. You've got people, the number of people who are willing to buy a product, which essentially is also called a demand. So demand means how many people are there to buy a product, who is ready to buy a product. That goes on the x-axis, and the price at which they're ready to buy, or the WTP, is plotted on the y-axis. Now, if you see that basis this, we found while Raj was ready to pay 500 or 300 or whatever price points, we had different people, different price points. After removing the outliers, we found that 225 is the price point with the highest demand. So ideally, this should be the WTP for your product in a standalone situation. I think this also relates with the question which Amit had asked on the Patanjali thing, wherein all other factors remain constant. However, if you were to detail this more out, this cannot be taken into a standalone situation in more cases because what we've not done in this case is we've not plotted competition, we've not plotted the customer behavior, and third, which is more important and very relevant in the current context or situation, is your overall economy. Because this may not be the correct index in the current COVID-19 pandemic. And last point is availability and rareness. So while this is a very basic thumb rule of finding out the WTP of your product, if you were to go into more details, then there are multiple ways of getting more accurate WTP. So the conclusion of this exercise in this particular example is that most customers will be willing to pay a maximum amount of rupees 225 for watching a movie. As simple as that. So while Raj went out and he wanted to spend 500 rupees watching a movie, but the willingness to pay for the PVR guy. So tomorrow, if the PVR guy wants to put a pricing of a movie, assuming that all other external factors are constant, the ideal WTP or the price point that he should be looking at is 225 or lower because WTP is the maximum amount which a customer is willing to pay. Now, as I mentioned, so once you've got your WTP, and I think if you want, all of you are find this to be interesting, I can also conduct a session which is more advanced and which talks about these external factors of plotting competition, plotting consumer behavior, market data on WTP. But these are very important things that once you've got this basic number, is you must look at competition, look at the pricing of other brands, especially true in e-commerce. And I've put in a small acronym called BSR. So it's much more easier because, when you're doing competition tracking, you'll be having thousands of products in your category. But look at the products which are in the BSR because those are well established products in terms of perception of quality, in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of competition. So given this situation that you are into e-commerce, this data is available to us. That's why it becomes much more easier versus the fact that you were selling an offline business. The second thing is WTP should also be mapped to your business objectives. So, for example, in this particular case, 225 is your WTP, but let's say tomorrow you realize that if I were to price this at 225 and that doesn't even meet my purchase price, doesn't take care of my cost, then what's the point of having this kind of a WTP? Might as well shell out that product. So I think that's another important thing when you must look at in terms of defining your WTP. The last more important thing is, especially for sellers and people who are selling multiple products which are very closely related to each other. So when you're doing a WTP, you might camouflage the sale of your own product. So you might become a competitor to yourself. कि आपने एक प्रोडक्ट का तो WTP ठीक कर दिया लेकिन उस WTP के चक्कर में उसके आगे के 4 और उसके पीछे के 5 जो प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनकी सेल गिर गई. So I think that's for e-commerce sellers another word of caution. And to find the right WTP, you need to do a lot of intensive research, evaluate the metrics again and again. And this answers the question of Harsh, wherein he had asked that if the time gap is more, then if you are in e-commerce, the WTP of a customer must be evaluated at least on a quarterly basis. And I think a quarterly is good enough. If you can't do it quarterly, do it on a 6 monthly basis. But I think follow the 80-20 rule. It's nearly impossible for us to do a WTP mapping for all of our products, but let's focus on the top 20% products which derive 80% of our sale. And if you were to filter that on even further, you can do that and then derive a WTP. Now, there are more scientific ways of getting more WTP, but I thought it's not a good idea to talk about these methods, but I'll just highlight. And in case there is interest in the group, then essentially there are four statistical tools which are proven, which are world proven excellent tools. I've used them many times in my life, especially the last two, which is your utility equalization, attribute valuation, price elasticity, and demand estimation. So these are four standard tools to calculate WTP. In case I don't think this would be these topics would be an interest to the entire group, but if anybody wants a one-on-one session, a discussion, I'll be happy to do that. Oh, so what happened? The computer didn't crash just now. Some of you would have thought it's a crash sign, but it didn't actually. And I'm happy that the WTP, while it was a little confusing topic in terms of the post which I saw in the group, but all of us survived through this session, and thank you so much, everybody, to be a part of this. So I have a video which I'll play towards the end of the session in case you want to leave. That's also okay in case people want to look at it. Then you can have a look at it. So that's from my side. We'll spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes in questions. Okay, so Raj has asked a question. In e-commerce scenario, there are other factors which impact customers' WTP, like I think this one which is we covered, and then there's another question in distribution. If distribution is important factor for WTP, so do you suggest that e-commerce sellers must go for clustering or regional distribution of products with respect to Amazon FBA or FA? See, honestly, distribution has got a linkage with the pricing, with so a distribution and a WTP. I don't personally, if you were to ask me, I don't think they have a linkage directly. So I'll tell you why. So today, a distribution is an outcome of how well you've priced a product, right? You will reach out and penetrate to more and more markets if you have the right price point, if you have the right price point. So distribution structure is going to get more widely networked if your product is priced correctly. So even if you were to look at from a basic marketing philosophy that we first started with when we did our colleging is that there are 4 P's, and 4 P's cumulatively define the success of a business. They are interrelated, but they're independent subjects. So that's product, price, promotion, and place. Now, place in a sense is what is distribution in this case. Your second question is that yes, sellers must go for clustering or regional distribution of products with respect to Amazon FBA. WTP definitely is decided by the demographics, by geography, by a lot of other factors. We've got several examples in which some products do well in North India, others do well in South, some do good in more better in rural areas, the other do well in urban areas. Definitely yes. If you've segmented your product, you know the markets for it, makes a very good idea to look at regional distribution. And if you recollect in my last session, there is one report which I mentioned about is to look at the location wise movement of your products, which means essentially that will also help you in defining which are the clusters, which are the locations that you must set up your or you must look at setting up your distribution hubs or FBA warehouses, etc. Okay, so hedonic value. So, Harsh, you want to discuss on hedonic value? I think it's important that we do this one-on-one because I think there's going to be a lot of theory. It's another session that we will want to possibly do on that. So I will skip this question here. Is there any other question from anyone? I think some people missed. I kind of put in a video in every session of mine. I think more because it's sharing of what great people have done in their lives. And I try and put those videos which have really motivated me. And, that's one of the reasons that I think it's important that I share these videos, which may even get some inspiration for all of you there. So that's it from me. Thank you, everybody, once again for being a part of this session. Look forward to having more interactions in future. So here's the video for you. All right. So thank you. In case the audio was not clear, I can share the video link on the FECOMS group and also here itself. So thank you.